when we hear this gospel reading, a familiar story to all of us of Peter and Jesus and the disciples in the boat with the waves and the wind crashing down around them. It's an easy story to tell because it's so dramatic. You can see the images in your mind. And when we hear this story, we're often drawn to try to figure out what in the world happened that caused Peter to sink. Was it because he took his eyes off Jesus? Was it because he had a lack of faith? Was it because he had insufficient trust? Why did he succumb to the fear and began to sink? We like to try to get in the head of Peter to try to figure all this out. But maybe it's not about Peter at all. Maybe it's not about what happened to Peter or about Peter or even that Peter was the one walking on the water. It could have been any one of us, couldn't it? Walking out in the storms of our lives, stepping out in the midst of the rain and the wind, the struggles that we face. Maybe this story is more about Jesus and the work that Jesus does in the midst of us to bring his presence to us. Maybe the problem with Peter is that he got out of the boat. Things were going pretty well for Peter. He was pretty safe in that boat with all of the disciples around him. Sure, they were rocking and rolling, back and forth, up and down, in and out, all around those waves. The wind was great, but they were safe. They were safe. Jesus was coming to them. He declared, "It is I. Don't be afraid." And so the problem with Peter is that he got out of the boat. It doesn't really matter why. It doesn't really matter why at all. He got out of the boat. He left the safety and the security of the community of disciples. And he stepped out on his own across the water. We too might be drawn to step out on our own, to go it alone, believing that we can face that diagnosis all by ourselves, believing that we can face the struggles that we have all by ourselves. I don't need anybody. I can do it myself. I remember my children very quickly, 2 years old, 2.5 years old. That's one of the phrases they learned right away, and I promise I didn't teach it to them. So where do they get that? That little hands on the hip, the little feet. I can do it myself. Maybe Becky learned it from Amanda, but I promise I didn't teach Amanda that phrase. And yet she knew it. Intuitively. It's part of who we are. Our desire to do it ourselves. To go it alone. And so Peter sees Jesus, hears Jesus speaks, and steps out of the boat. I want to come see you. I don't want to wait for you to get here. I want to walk out there on the water with you. There is a ministry in North Carolina called the Kairos Prison Ministry. It's along the same lines for those of you who've done Via Cristo, Crescio, you walked to Emmaus. It's on those same lines. It's a 3-day spiritual retreat. But it happens inside of a prison with the inmates who are there. And generally, the most severe, the most people with the longest tenure in the prison. Because if you minister to them first, they're less likely to harm those who are going to be around who are the least of the offenders. So this ministry reaches out first to those who are incarcerated with the largest, biggest crimes, the life sentences, the scariest of them all. I served on Women's Kairos #1 in North Carolina. In the Women's Correctional Center in Raleigh, North Carolina, it's the maximum security prison for women in the state. 1,200 inmates, 800 staff, 35 of us. We worked with a group of about 50 on this retreat for 3 days. We would go in at 7 in the morning and we'd leave at 9 at night. And to hear those doors locking behind us as we made our way to the inside. Now the thing about prison ministry and about Kairos is that every inmate and every staff person receives a dozen homemade, not store-bought, homemade cookies every day. 1,288 inmates, 826 staff, 2,114 total, times 3 days, requires 6,342 dozen cookies. Individual cookies amount to 76,104. And did I say that there were 35 of us team members? And we were expected to prepare the cookies and bring them to the prison. When you divide that number, 6,342 by 35, guess how many dozen I had to make? 181. Now, I could do that on my own. Of course I could. If I started years before and started preaching these things, of course I could. I could go out on my own and say, I'm going to do it. If I only bake 6 dozen every night, I'll get this done. Or I can enlist the help of the community. And I can say, community, I need your help to make cookies. And we can gather in the church kitchen, we can use the 3 or 4 ovens that we had available there, and we can knock out some cookies over the course of about 2 weeks. Together, we can do so much more when we remain in community. When we remain with each other, we can accomplish whatever it is that God brings our way. We can accomplish it, not because of us and our efforts, but because Jesus multiplies and expands the capacity of each one of us to meet the need presented before us. You may not have heard, but Family Promise of Flagler County determined that it needed to cease to exist because of the struggle it faced to raise money, to secure employment, to find housing for our families. A hard decision made over lots of tears and gnashing of teeth, conversations about what other alternatives might exist, but the determination was the same. This ministry was not going to work any longer. But the benefit, the good news of that, is that through the 26 months of Family Promise's existence, more than 25 families with children experiencing homelessness were served. 400 plus volunteers, 10 host congregations, 5 support congregations, congregations that had not shared in ministry ever. And yet they came together to reach out to these people. That meant more than 5,000 meals, more than 5,000 sleeping nights in the safety and security of congregations, more than 25,000 combined hours of community service. So we can't dwell on the fact that this ministry has ended. Instead, we celebrate what God did among us. And we look for ways that God is calling us to be the church together again. And we seek out those opportunities. We're already thinking about that. Thinking about what might be a better fit for our community so that we don't lose the momentum of these congregations working together. We can do so much more when we remain in community. You can face an illness, a disease, with the support of your brothers and sisters when you remain in community. You can face the struggles of marriage, the ups and downs of our financial lives together. You can face that with the support and encouragement of the community. And the assurance that Jesus is showing up, walking across the turmoil of your life, and climbing into the boat with you, with us. Jesus is showing up. And sometimes the Lord shows up in the sheer silence of our prayers. In the sheer silence, when we don't know what else to say or what else to do, Jesus shows up. And so, my sisters and brothers, as we prepare to move into a renovated sanctuary, looking forward to all the good that's going to come in that space, celebrating the good that has happened, looking forward to a future that's not yet painted, and wondering about where it is that God is taking us, and how it is that God is equipping us, is calling us to be the church together. May God bless our time, our ministries, our community of faith, that we can be the church to a world that needs us. Amen.